inspector in the 90s. That's when I met him. In those days, he was welcomed at Fox, and that's how he and I became friends. And then eventually, this is no secret, Fox was not happy with what he was saying. But what kind of resistance did he meet in those days?
Well, lots of resistance. He supervised as head of that inspection team under the UN the destruction of Iraqi weapons of mass destruction. Their chemical, biological, their missile program, and what they had with respect to a nuclear program. So he verified they were destroyed. And when he saw that the CIA and DIA and all the other so-called intelligence community, which really just a bunch of fiefdoms, okay, where they're all saying that Saddam has weapons of mass destruction again, and we have to start a war because of that. Well, the virtue of anger and the virtue of courage kicked in, right? And Scott came down to Washington, tried to see his senator. Her name was Hillary Clinton, right? He tried to see Joe Biden. I couldn't get past the door. For Tony Blinken stood in the door saying, "Oh, you can't go in there." They had a bunch of hacks testify, and the war began. Now, before the war began, this is a little vignette that may be applicable here. Before the war began, I noticed that Newsweek had a little item on the web on the 24th of February. Remember now, the war started 3-4 weeks later in March. And it said, whoops, wait a second, there may not be weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. We have the text of the debriefing report of Saddam Hussein's son-in-law. His name was Hussein Kamel. And he says that they were all destroyed. And he says he ran those programs. So, my God, what are we going to do? So Newsweek prints that. And then they go up to the CIA and the PR guys, Bill Harlow, said, no, this is untrue, false, inaccurate, and just bogus, okay? So all the press goes back and says, oh, my God, whew, thanks, Bill. And we were going to publish stories about that. After all, we're going to go for a war. Anyhow, I happened to be with Scott about 5 years ago. And I said, Scott, look, tell me if you know anything about this. That gutsy person who leaked to Newsweek the unclassified UN report on the debriefing of Saddam Hussein's son-in-law, in which he said there were no weapons of mass. Oh, do you know who did that? And he looked at me like, was I putting him on? And he says, Ray, I did it. And he said, Ray, that's only half the story. I said, hey, there's another. Yeah, he said, I just went as a last resort to Newsweek. I had gone to CNN weeks before, after Colin Powell told that bunch of lies. And we had a whole program ready to go. It was a long program, and exposed this whole thing on the basis of the documents that I had, and I showed them. And the evening before the program was to run, CNN got a call from the CIA, said Scott, and they were told to knock it off. That's when I went to Newsweek. I was encouraged that Newsweek would not be able to avoid publishing it, but then, of course, the whole thing that they put the kibosh on it. Now, there's lots of lessons to be learned from that, but one lesson, of course, is that Scott moved everything he possibly could to get the word out that, look, this is an unnecessary war. And he was terribly disappointed that, the CNN thing caved, and Newsweek was persuaded by the spokesperson for the CIA not to pursue this story. That's a mark of the man. And the fact that he never told